There is a famous author named C.S. Lewis who once said that friendship begins the moment one person says to another, "No way, you too? I thought I was the only one." Now that's paraphrased, but C.S. Lewis is famous for understanding friendship and had a long-time friendship with author J.R. Tolkien. We have one chapter in a short amount of time to cover two huge areas, friends and family. So we're going to jump in. I'm going to spend the first part talking about friendships, and then we'll look at family. Again, we're taking a 10,000-foot view. I want you to really jump into your textbook to look at what are my friendships? How would I categorize them? How have I built them? So we'll start by looking at what influences our communication. And this is really important that you understand a few key parts to this. We want to look at qualities of friends. This is sort of components. How do I know if I have a friend, right? Well, typically it's someone that equals us, that we feel connected to. We often will use words like peer, and we'll say we are very similar in maybe, or on the same page philosophically, or in our faith, our culture, our background, maybe even socioeconomically. We'll look at, in this era of defining friendships, which is really hard, we'll look at, can we have an unlimited number of friends? We'll explore that specifically online. We also need to know that a lot of times our friends are designed to suit our needs. Maslow talked about a hierarchy of needs: need to belong, need to feel good about ourselves. But we also have practical needs. Like I need people to carpool with and someone to go to the gym with. And so that's also what influences our communication that then leads to this area of friendship. So equals unlimited number and designed to suit needs. We're looking at, like, in this quality of friends, I want you to think about your friendships and how many that you have and how do they help meet your needs and where do you feel like you're equal. Now, there's a great little quiz on page 115 in your textbook that I want you to take a minute. Think of one friend that you have. And I want you to answer the questions on page 115 with that friend in mind. And then we'll look at, I would love for you to keep that friend in mind as we progress through this so that you're thinking about them. Now, one of my favorite quotes from my mentor is, "Show me your friends and I'll show you your future." I think it's important that we not just make friends, but we choose friends, because research says that is pretty strongly correlated with whether or not we will be successful in life, especially academically. So how do we choose friends, or a lot of times make friends? One, we have similarities. We have things in common with them. That's pretty fundamental. Sometimes it's complementary. So I have a friend who I was considered a really nice person, and a lot of people were afraid of her, and they thought, how can you be friends? But the truth is she complimented me really well. I loved that no one messed with me because of her. I felt protected. So sometimes we can have differences, and that will make us like each other. Mutual liking. There's a proverb that says people like people that like them. To be in a friendship, it needs to be mutual. You can't think, oh, this person is the greatest, I would do anything for them. And then they don't give you the time of day, don't acknowledge you. There's no reciprocation there. Then you're in a doormat relationship, not a friendship. That's very different. Typically, when we look at how do we choose friends, we find people that we admire, people that we respect, that we can look up to. And finally, this issue of self-disclosure. Think back to our chapter on interpersonal relationships. How do we build those? And that comes through this idea of self-disclosure. We looked at the Johari window. We looked at social penetration theory. If you haven't watched that video, go back to it. All right, let's look at types of friends. If you were in my class today, I would say write down all the people you consider friends right now. We're about to categorize them. So I want you to do kind of something similar. Write down a bunch of friends and go, where do these fall? So if I made a little chart, we would do that, but I want you to think through. So maybe put their names at the top of your piece of paper. We're going to go through this. You're going to say, are they this or this? All right, let's start with the first one. Is this a short-term friend or a long-term friend? Are you friends with them because you both work at the same restaurant and you're in the same proximity, but maybe they wouldn't be a friend you have forever? Are they low or high disclosure? Are they a person that you say, like, we talk about the weather, that's pretty much it? Or they know my favorite coffee, but we don't disclose a lot of information. Depending on the climate, the setting, whether they've revealed things to you or you to them and it's been reciprocated, Sometimes we have friends who we just don't share that much with. We might do things with them. We don't disclose a lot, but then there are other people we have high disclosure. Okay, doing or being oriented. If you are volunteering in an organization, or maybe you're at work, you find yourself with friends that pretty much every time you spend time together, you're doing something with a mission or purpose. I encourage people, if you're having trouble building friendships, find a purpose. Find something you can do with people. Some of my favorite memories are doing things with friends. We look back on that. It's great. Then we have being oriented, people that you just hang out. You don't do anything together necessarily. You're just spending time together. Okay, low or high obligation. This is where we layer back earlier in the textbook, this idea of culture. This kind of comes into play, this low context or high context. Low obligation. Do I feel obligated to do a lot for them? Do I feel obligated to attend their stuff? What is our relationship like? Or is it high obligation? Like if they ask, I have to do it. I always feel like there's a high obligation. Oftentimes low context cultures will lead to low. High context will lead to high. Frequent or occasional contact. Is this someone you're texting 3 times a day? Or do they fall under the occasional? I check in once a month, or I check in every couple months. But all of these sort of, we could categorize, and we would say, okay, so which ones do you feel like are your strongest? And does the amount of contact that you have with them play out in whether that's a strong friendship or not? All right, we've got to layer gender, and again, it gets kind of fluid. So obviously there are no stereotypes. We're not going to put everyone in a box. There are exceptions to all of these. But men and women have different friendship styles. So women, if you see a group of women, typically, stereotypically, they like to talk in a group. Men like to communicate shoulder to shoulder. There's a lot of research about them feeling connected when they're not making eye contact, but they're sitting next to each other on road trips, playing video games, playing in an offensive line together, right? So they typically communicate well shoulder to shoulder. There are advantages of other sex friends. They give you perspective. Sometimes the obligations are different. They can be really helpful. So look at this chapter and read. And I want you to ask yourself, is that true of my other sex friendship? Sometimes if you're a female, I've heard lots of females say, I like to have male friends. There's no drama involved with that. Well, there are pros and cons to both. So again, look at that. Okay, I want to look at this really interesting thing, and then we'll jump into online, this contact hypothesis. When we look at different groups of people, especially in your textbook, it kind of jumps into LGBTQ community, or even with transgender individuals. I also want you to think about people who have different background from you, maybe different culture, maybe they look very different. The contact hypothesis says that if you spend time with those people, you are nicer to all of the people in the groups that they represent. Dr. Brene Brown, who's a social science researcher and a New York Times bestselling author and speaker, and professor at the University of Houston Graduate Social Work Program, says people are hard to hate up close. And I would encourage you, because of this contact hypothesis, ask yourself, how often do I get up close to a person who represents a group that I may not be familiar with or spend time with? It develops empathy in me for all of those groups. I'm such a fan of spending time with people that are not like us. It gives us interesting perspective on the world. All right, let's look at communicating online. And this is really important because this is the world we live in. There are benefits to communicating with friends online. It allows us to experience communication with people that are not like us. Age, ethnicity, again, all kinds of marginalized groups. It gives us a chance for diversity. Self-closure is a different beast online. Sometimes people will disclose a lot of personal information online. It's harder to have a filter. And so we need to really think through, there's still a healthy process. I would encourage you, even though it feels safe sometimes, or your textbook says less intimidating, be careful about the self-disclosure process. And then convenient. Here's the thing about online. It's just become really convenient. I don't have to leave my house. I don't have to get off my couch. I can make friends while I sit at home and eat ice cream or Doritos. So there are benefits to spending time with people online. there's a really interesting research piece in your textbook that I want you to pay attention to, and that is, how many friends can I have online? A researcher named Dunbar looked into that, and they said, realistically, emotionally, psychologically, intellectually, the magic number is 150. We can manage about 150 online relationships, and that's where we tap out. So no matter how many followers you have, or people that are linked to you in any social media site, 150 is really the place where it caps out. So we build relationships in lots of ways. I want to take a pause, and we're going to move on to part 2, where we tackle some basics of family relationships. And this is a big one. So take a minute, take a break, grab a drink of water, coffee, and then head over to part 2.